Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to Beyond Curious and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way YouTube keeps showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. I'm Ronnie Ashwell. I'm 19 and for the past 3 summers I've worked the marina at Wren Lake, a reservoir about 40 minutes from where I grew up. It was built back in the 60s by damming up a valley that used to have a whole small town in it before the water came in. Most of what I do is gas up pontoon boats, sell worms and sodas out of the bait shop window, and yell at teenagers about the no-wake zone near the swim cove. It's a good job, sun all day, regulars who feel like family by August. Tip's good enough that I have never once regretted turning down a warehouse job that paid better. It's supposed to be a boring job too. For 2.5 summers, it mostly was. There's a version of Wren Lake most people who rent our pontoons never think about. There's an old town foundation still down there somewhere under all that water. A church, a general store, a scatter of house footings. Nobody's ever mapped it exactly. I used to think that was just a spooky sounding fact for tourists. I think about it differently now. The first time I heard about anything strange was from a family that came back every July. The kind of regulars who tip well and remember your name. Their youngest, maybe 8 years old, came running up from the swim platform one afternoon, insisting something had bumped his foot in water that was supposed to be too shallow and too clear for anything bigger than sunfish. His parents laughed it off. Catfish, they said. Or a submerged log. Wren Lake's full of both. I laughed it off too. That's rationalization number 1. And I want to be honest that at the time I fully believed it. Late that same July, a fisherman named Dale, an older guy missing half a finger from some accident he never fully explained, out on the water most mornings before the marina even opened, came in white-faced asking to borrow the office phone. His depth finder had picked up a mass near the old dam wall that, in his own words, was bigger than anything that's supposed to live in a reservoir, moving the wrong way for a school of fish, and gone by the time I checked twice. I told him it was probably a sunken tree, debris shifting in the current. He didn't argue with me. He also never fished that stretch again for the rest of the season, which told me more than his words had. Between Dale's report and the canoe, there was a smaller thing I almost didn't count at the time. A couple in their 40s rented our kayaks and paddled near the same stretch by the dam wall. They came back early and a little quiet. When I asked how the paddle was, the wife said it was fine. The husband waited a bit before seeing the water had felt off out there. Colder in patches than it should have been in August. He said something had passed under one of the kayaks close enough that he'd felt the hull rock without any wind or wake to explain it. He laughed as he said it. The kind of laugh people do when they want you to agree with them that it's nothing. I agreed with him. I wanted to believe it as much as he did. Then, during the second week of August, a canoe went over in water so calm you could have read a book on the surface of it. 2 kids were paddling near the swim cove. No wind, no wake, nothing. The canoe just rolled, hard enough that one of them came up with a scraped elbow and swore something solid had passed directly underneath the hull a half second before it happened. My boss, a guy who's chewed on the same toothpick for as long as I've known him, told the kids' parents it was probably a submerged log shifting. Same story as always. Then, on the walk back to the office, he reminded me, "We don't need people scared off Wren Lake, Ronnie. We need people renting pontoons." That's the marina's whole business model talking, not an actual answer. We both knew it. The night that changed things for me happened at the very end of the season. I was doing a dock check alone after closing. Nothing unusual about the assignment itself. I'd done it 100 times, rain or shine, and I could probably walk that whole dock system with my eyes shut. It was maybe 9:40. The air was cooling off fast, the way it does once September gets close. It was quiet enough to hear my own footsteps on the boards and the small slap of water against the pilings. I was checking the last cleat on the swim platform, flashlight in one hand, when I saw something break the surface out past the buoy line. Not a splash, a breach. Something rose just enough to show the curve of something dark and much too large before it slipped back under without a sound, like it had decided against finishing whatever motion it had started. I stood completely still. My flashlight stayed locked on the spot where it had been. I started counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, nothing. The water closed back over itself like it had never been disturbed at all. I felt the dock shift under my feet maybe 4 seconds later. A slow, heavy push against one of the pilings. The kind of thing that happens when something with real mass passes close beneath a structure. Not a wave, not wind, a single deliberate displacement of water against wood. My whole body understood what that meant before my brain finished catching up. I didn't stay to find out what came next. I was up the ramp and in my truck with the doors locked before I'd fully processed deciding to run. I sat there in the dark parking lot for a long time afterward. The engine was running. Both hands were on the wheel. I waited for my heart rate to come down enough that I trusted myself to drive. Here's where this one's a little different from most of what you'll hear about places like Wren Lake. About 6 weeks after the season ended, a drowning at a different reservoir 2 counties over got some local news coverage. During that story, a reporter asked our state wildlife department whether Wren Lake had ever been surveyed for its depth and structural safety. They sent a 2-person crew out with proper sonar equipment, the kind that's actually calibrated, not a fisherman's off-the-shelf unit. I was there for part of it, off the clock, because I wanted to see for myself. They found what Dale had described, more or less. An anomalous mass near the old dam wall, roughly the outline of something long and irregular, big enough that their equipment flagged it as worth noting in the final report. Too deep, and the water too murky, for a diver to safely confirm what it actually was. Their official write-up called it an unresolved sonar anomaly, likely debris, recommend no further action. But I watched both surveyors' faces when the readout came back. Neither of them looked like people who believed their own recommendation. Nothing's been caught. Nobody's been hurt badly enough that Wren Lake has ever made real news beyond a paragraph in the survey report. But the swim cove closes at dusk now, permanently. New marina policy. No explanation given to guests beyond insurance requirements. I don't do solo dock checks after dark anymore either. My boss quietly changed that policy around the same time the survey results came back. Still chewing the same toothpick. Still never once saying out loud why. Though I've noticed he doesn't argue anymore when Dale brings it up over coffee. Dale still fishes the lake most mornings. Just never that stretch by the dam wall. He's never once asked me what I saw the night the dock moved under my feet. I've never told him. I think we've reached an understanding without ever needing the conversation. I don't know what's down by the dam wall, resting somewhere near whatever's left of that old flooded town. I know it's real because the state agency's own calibrated equipment said so in writing, even if the only word they were willing to put next to it was unresolved. That's more than Dale or that 8-year-old kid ever got out of anyone in an official capacity. I figure it's about as close to an answer as Wren Lake is ever going to give anybody. Most nights, I've made my peace with that being enough. I did 6 years in the Air Force, and I'm not going to give you my rank or my exact job title, because some of what I'm about to tell you is still, technically, something I signed paperwork about. I'll tell you I stood a lot of night perimeter watch at a base I'll call Castellan, because that wasn't its name. On a stretch of coastline I'll leave vague for the same reason. What I will give you is the number, because the number is the only part of this I'm sure of down to the digit. 17. 17 nights. Perimeter watch is, by design, the most boring job on any base. You walk a fence line, you note anything that isn't supposed to be there, and on a normal night the most interesting thing that happens is a raccoon setting off a motion light, or some junior guy getting written up for falling asleep against a support post. I liked it honestly. 6 hours of quiet and your own thoughts, coffee going cold in your hand, the ocean somewhere past the tree line making a sound you stop noticing after the first month. I want you to understand how genuinely uneventful that job was supposed to be, because it makes what came next feel like it happened to someone else's base, not the one I actually knew. It started on a Thursday in early December, cold enough that breath hung in front of your face like it didn't want to leave either. Around 2200 hours, comms started picking up chatter about small aircraft over the flight line. Nothing urgent sounding at first, just somebody radioing that they had a visual on lights they couldn't identify. I was 300 yards away on watch, and I saw them too. 5, maybe 6 points of light, moving in a loose cluster, too slow and too controlled to be anything commercial. No engine sound I could pick up even in dead quiet December air. The first night, everybody assumed drones. Some idiot with a hobby kit testing the fence line, we figured, and base security ran a sweep that turned up nothing. No operator, no launch site, no debris. I told myself that just meant we hadn't found him yet. That was rationalization number 1. The second night the lights came back at almost exactly the same time, same loose formation. This time one of them held completely still for close to 4 minutes over the flight line before the whole cluster peeled off and vanished east, out over the water, faster than anything I'd have called a drone should have been able to move. I told myself maybe it was a new testing program nobody down at my level had been briefed on. Rationalization number 2. By night 4, a guy I worked watch with a lot, I'll call him Priest because that's what everyone called him on account of him actually meaning it when he said grace before chow, stopped making jokes about it entirely. Priest was the kind of guy who could find something funny about anything, and around 0100 that night, he just looked at me across the fence line, no lights visible right at that moment, and said quiet, like he didn't want it to carry. "These aren't ours, are they?" Not really a question. I told him I didn't know. That was true. It was also the first time either of us had said out loud what we were both clearly already thinking. By night 5, they'd started pulling training missions on the F-22s off the schedule entirely, and moved 2 birds to another base overnight. Quietly, no announcement, just an empty spot in the hangar the next morning where a jet had been, and a maintenance crew standing around it looking like they'd been told something they weren't allowed to repeat. That's when I stopped telling myself anything. I want to be specific about what changed because vague dread isn't really what this was. It was numbers not adding up. Our watch logs for those 17 nights got collected up personally by an officer I'll call Major R, a guy who'd been a Castellan longer than almost anyone. He was gruff, walked with a limp from an old jump injury, the kind of guy who complained about the coffee machine every single morning without fail for 6 years. After night 9, he stopped complaining about the coffee machine. He stopped doing a lot of things. He got quiet in a way that felt less like exhaustion and more like a man who'd been told something he didn't want to carry alone and had nobody cleared to share it with. A friend of mine, I'll call her Frost, that's not her real name, just what we called her, got curious enough to ask one too many questions in the wrong meeting, the same one where Major R laid out the drone testing explanation. She pushed on it, politely, professionally, the kind of question that's really just, "That doesn't add up," phrased, so it can't get you in trouble. She had orders to a base in another state within the week. No warning, no real explanation, just paperwork that appeared on a Monday, and a going away we threw her with about 36 hours notice in the break room, with a sheet cake somebody'd grabbed from the commissary at the last minute. She hugged me before she left and said, close enough that only I heard it, "Don't ask the question I asked." I told her I wouldn't. Nobody said any of it was connected to the lights. Nobody had to. Around night 10, Major R called 4 of us who'd worked the most watch shifts into a room that didn't have windows, and told us, flatly, that whatever we thought we'd seen, the official position was drone testing by a partner agency, and that repeating anything else off base, to family, to a girlfriend, to anybody, would be treated as a security matter. He didn't say it like a threat. He said it like a man reading something off a card he hadn't written himself and didn't fully believe. And when I asked him directly whether he believed that explanation, he looked at me for a long few seconds and said, "Doesn't matter what I believe, matters what's in the report." Then he told the coffee machine, not any of us, that it needed descaling again, and walked out. That was the last joke, real or otherwise, I ever heard Major R make about that coffee machine. Night 14 is the one I actually think about most. I was on the fence line closest to the tree stand at the edge of the property. Scrubby pines, nothing anybody'd paid attention to before that month, and the lights that night were further off than usual, almost lazy, like whatever was flying them wasn't especially interested in the base for once. Through my night vision I caught movement that wasn't the lights at all, low along the ground at the base of the trees, maybe 40 yards out. It did not move like a person, and did not move like any 4-legged animal I've spent a lifetime around. It moved in sections, like something folding and unfolding itself as it went, low to the ground, and then briefly not, a shape I couldn't get to hold still in the green wash of the scope before it was gone into the tree line. I stood there afterward for a long time, close to 5 full minutes by the clock on my rifle, waiting to see if it would come back out. It didn't. I never reported that part. I'm still not entirely sure why. I think some part of me understood that saying it out loud would be the thing that got me a set of orders like Frost's, and some other part of me, the part I like less, understood that once I said it, I'd have to actually believe I'd seen it. And I wasn't ready to carry that yet. On night 17, the lights didn't come back. Nobody announced why. Training missions resumed, like nothing had happened. 6 weeks later, I was pulling a file for something unrelated, and found, misfiled behind it, 2 pages of an incident report with most of the text blacked out. But one line had survived the redaction, right at the bottom, in a font slightly different from the rest, like it had been added after. Non-standard biological signature, unconfirmed, does not warrant further escalation at this time. I photographed it on my personal phone before I put it back exactly where I'd found it. 3 days later, when I went looking for that file again out of curiosity, it wasn't there. I never found it again, and I never asked anyone about it, because by then I understood exactly what asking would cost me. I got out a year later, unrelated reasons, or that's what I told people at the time and mostly still tell people now. Major R retired around the same time, sooner than anyone expected, from a guy who used to say he'd die on that base before he'd take a pension. Priest is out too, works construction somewhere landlocked, about as far from a coastline as he could manage, which might mean nothing at all. Frost and I still talk sometimes. She's never once brought up why she got moved, and I have never once asked, and I think we both silently agreed that's a kindness we're doing each other rather than an accident. I still have the photo of that line of text on an old phone I keep charged in a drawer for no reason I can defend. I look at it sometimes. It's the only thing about those 17 nights that anyone, anywhere, ever admitted to in writing, even by accident, even in a font that didn't match the rest of the page. I don't know what was in those trees, and I don't know what the lights actually were, if they were even related to each other at all. What I know is that something was real enough that the Air Force itself put a description of it in an official report, however briefly, before somebody remembered to take that description back out. That's the whole answer I ever got, and some nights I think it's more of an answer than most people who go looking for this kind of thing ever receive. My name's Mara Voss. I'm 24 and I work the counter at Voss and Kessler Hardware, my uncle's store. It's had my last name on the sign since before I was born, so nobody ever bothered changing it even after I started working there. I live about 4 miles outside a town called Concord Mills, right where the river bends around what's left of an old mill dam. I bike the towpath home most nights, because gas is expensive and the path is flat the whole way. And because for 23 of my 24 years, that ride was the easiest part of my day. I want to be clear about that, because I need you to understand how many times I did this before anything was wrong. I've made that ride in the rain, in the dark, half asleep after closing shift, singing out loud to nobody, somewhere around 600 times, easy. I know exactly where the path floods after heavy rain, exactly which stretch loses cell signal, exactly how long it takes from the store to my porch light if I don't stop to look at anything. 14 minutes if the light's with me. 17 if I'm tired. This is about the one time I didn't finish it the way I started it. Concord Mills is the kind of town where the biggest excitement most years is whether the county fair gets rained out. Population just over 2,000. One stoplight that everybody still calls the new light, even though it went in before I was born. My uncle's store sits 2 doors down from the diner, and between the two of us, we probably know what's going on with half the town's plumbing and all of its gossip. I say all that because I need you to understand what kind of place this is. Nothing happens in Concord Mills. That was true for 23 years, and then it wasn't. It began small, the way these things always do. Late September, maybe 9:30 at night, I heard something in the reeds along the bank. A heavy, dragging kind of movement. Not fast. I told myself it was a heron. We get herons on that stretch, big ones, and they walk like they're annoyed at the whole world. I kept pedaling. A week later, same spot, same time, almost to the minute. This time the sound stopped when I got close, which a heron wouldn't do. I told myself it was a deer that had frozen up, the way deer do. I didn't stop to check. I want to be honest, I didn't want to know badly enough to actually look. By the 3rd week, I'd started timing my rides around it without admitting that's what I was doing. I told my uncle, half joking, over the counter one slow Tuesday afternoon. He said probably a beaver, maybe a big raccoon, and went back to restocking drill bits without looking up. My uncle has never in his life been wrong about hardware, and has never once, in 24 years, been right about wildlife. But I let it go because it was easier than the alternative. A few days after that, I mentioned it again to Denise, who runs the register at the diner and has lived on the river her whole life. She didn't laugh either, which should have told me something. She just went quiet for a second and said, "Which bend?" And when I told her, she nodded slowly and said her father used to tell her not to swim past the dam after dark when she was a kid, and when she asked him why, all he'd ever say was that some stretches of river keep to themselves. She said it like she was repeating a saying, not a warning, and changed the subject to ask if I wanted pie. I didn't think about that conversation again until much later, when I understood exactly what she'd meant and exactly why she hadn't wanted to say it plainly. The first time I saw a shape, it was nothing dramatic. A patch of dark against darker water, low to the ground, gone before I'd finished blinking. But the next morning, on my way back into town for the early shift, I stopped at the bend out of curiosity I still don't fully understand, and I found a print in the mud at the waterline. 3 toes, long ones, splayed wide like a frog's, except it was easily 9 inches across, and the depth of it told me whatever made it had some real weight behind it. I took a photo. I didn't show anyone yet. I told myself I'd wait for a clearer one. I got a clearer one 2 weeks after that, and I wish I hadn't. It was a Tuesday, close to 10 at night, and the towpath was empty the way it always is by then. There'd been rain earlier, so the air had that wet green smell the riverbank gets, mud and reeds, and something faintly like a fish tank that's overdue for cleaning. I heard the dragging sound again, right on schedule, like it kept its own calendar better than I kept mine. And this time, when I slowed down without meaning to, my body just did it, some older, dumber part of my brain taking the wheel. I watched something at the edge of the water rise up onto 2 legs. I'm not going to describe it like I understood what I was looking at, because I didn't, and I still don't. It was taller than I expected something that had been crouched low in reeds to be. Taller than me, easily, maybe by 1.5 feet. Its knees bent the wrong direction for a person, and the right direction for nothing I could name. The skin, if that's the word, caught what little light there was in a way that made it look wet all over, even the parts that shouldn't have still been wet. It didn't lunge, it didn't make a sound beyond the water running off it back into the river. It just stood there, and it turned its head toward me. Slow, deliberate, not startled, like it had been waiting to see whether I'd notice it was already watching. I counted later, lying awake, that it can't have been more than 4 or 5 seconds, start to finish, before I was moving again. It felt considerably longer while it was happening. I didn't scream. I want that on record, because I think about that a lot. That the only thing my body did was pedal, harder than I've ever pedaled anything in my life, the whole 4 miles home, convinced the entire time that I could hear something keeping pace with me in the tree line just past the edge of my headlight, though I never actually turned to check. I have never once turned to check. I'm not sure I want to know if I was right. I told a sheriff's deputy about it 2 days later, Deputy Halverson, a guy with a bad knee who limps into the hardware store every couple weeks, for a part for something around his house that's always breaking. I expected him to laugh, or at least to make the kind of joke people make when they think you've had a long week. He didn't. He set down the fitting he'd been about to buy, and he asked me, very carefully, exactly which bend of the river, exactly what time, exactly how tall. Then he told me, off the record, leaning against the counter like he wanted this conversation to look like small talk to anyone walking by, that he'd taken 2 other calls that year about something upright near the water. One from a jogger, one from a man fishing alone before sunrise who wouldn't give his name. Both times, Halverson said, his sergeant had told him to log it as a bear or a large piece of waterfowl, because nobody at Concord Mills PD wanted 3 sworn statements about a thing standing up out of the river sitting in a monthly report that the county might actually read. He told me to log mine the same way, if I bothered logging it at all. He wasn't unkind about it. He just looked like a man who'd already made his peace, a long time ago, with not being believed about something he knew he'd seen. I still ride the towpath. I won't pretend I don't. It's still the fastest way home, and the hardware store doesn't pay enough for me to justify the extra 15 minutes the road route takes. but I leave earlier now, before it's fully dark, and there's a private little group chat with 6 other people in this town. People who've each seen their own version of the same thing, at the same bend, over different years, where we post what we've got, instead of calling it in. Nobody in that chat has a photo any clearer than mine. Nobody's died. Nobody's been hurt, not once, not that any of us know of. It just watches. That's the part I can't get past. Not that something lives down there, but that the one time it let me see it clearly, it didn't look surprised to be seen. It looked like it had been waiting to find out what I'd do. Denise still asks me, every few weeks, whether I've seen anything, in the same careful sideways way she asked about it the first time, and I still don't have a real answer for her. Halverson retired last spring. I don't know if anyone replaced whatever quiet understanding he had with that stretch of river, or if that understanding just leaves with him. I still don't know what I'd have done if it had taken a single step toward me. I think about that more than I think about anything else that's ever happened to me. I go home a different way sometimes, for no reason I could defend to anyone, and I've stopped pretending to myself that those are unrelated choices. I just don't feel like finding out tonight.